It's time for Nebraska Cornhusker football to step up in the Big Ten. Can they win those close games this year? They couldn't last year, but Matt Rhule is the new guy in charge.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We really, really appreciate it. This thing is growing leaps and bounds thanks to you guys out there. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, what can Matt Rhule do that Scott Frost didn't do last year? How about winning some close games? We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll have an analysis of the Nebraska schedule and our Big Ten top 10 to close it out later on. Stay tuned for that one. We're going to look at who has the best running backs game in the entire Big Ten. We're going to rank them 1 through 10. Probably going to be some controversy there. Probably. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. All right, everything kind of begins with Matt Rhule, the head football coach at Nebraska. This is a team that went 4-8 last year, 3-6 in the conference. And look, let's take a moment here. If you're a Nebraska fan and you're watching right now, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, okay? I mean, Nebraska, you are a proud people. This was a football program that was as good as any from 1970 all the way through the 1990s. 5 national championships, Heisman Trophy winners like Johnny Rodgers, Mike Rozier, Eric Crouch, the whole Tom Osborne thing, one of the greatest coaches of all time. You're a very proud bunch. There's no doubt about it. And then Bo Pelini comes in. Now, Bo won some games, but he helped from the transition into the Big Ten. Mike Riley came in, was a 500 coach. Scott Frost came in. That didn't work, sadly. I know a lot of people wanted it to. I think he won 34% of his games. And I know you're just chomping at the bit to be mentioned with the rest of the big boys in the Big Ten. You know, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, Wisconsin, they grab all the headlines. You Nebraska fans, you're going, yeah, but what about, we want to be up there too. We're proud. We have a huge history. What's it going to take? We don't want to be an afterthought of the Big Ten. And yet it's been 6 years without a winning season. Although, take solace in this real quick. Last year, and we're going to go over this a little bit, how many close games there were. I heard it said, how was it put? Nebraska was the best bad team in college football last year. All those, just like one play in like 5 different games. It could be a completely different season. So Matt Rhule comes in, and we know his story. Look, he's a former Penn State linebacker. He goes to Temple, where nobody ever wins. This was one of the worst football programs in all of college football. Wins 10 games twice. Then Baylor says, well, let's hire this guy. Our program's at the bottom of the barrel right now. He goes to Baylor. And within 3 years, the first year they win 1 game. Year 3, they win 11. Well, that caught the eye of the Carolina Panthers, and he went to the NFL. They threw all sorts of money. In fact, reset the coaching money market. A lot of other teams were upset with the Panthers, but they got him. They lured him. But it didn't work out well. They couldn't get their quarterback situation squared away, and he went 11-27, and then before you know it, he was out the door. But not for long. In comes Nebraska. 8 years, $74 million. Hey, could you be our new head coach? Now, you don't offer a guy an 8-year deal for anything that's going to be a quick fix. So there's some work to be done here, and that's what we're going to talk about moving forward on the rest of this podcast as we look at the Nebraska football team. Of course, with an offense, he's bringing Marcus Satterfield with him as the offensive coordinator. I think he likes to throw. So let's take a look at the quarterback situation. Now, Casey Thompson, he transferred out of there, and he's going to Florida Atlantic. There's a lot of changes, a lot of mix and match on this roster. Transfers out, transfers in, young guys, some leftover guys that were pretty good. We're going to figure it all out here today. So Casey Thompson is out. Jeff Sims, he transfers in from Georgia Tech. Now, Jeff Sims, He's a dual threat guy. He'll run a little bit, he'll throw a little bit, but he's only played in like 15 games over the last 2 years because he has been hurt. He's got to figure out how to stay healthy and protect himself a little better. The wide receivers that he's going to be throwing to, top wide receiver Trey Palmer is now with the Buccaneers, so Nebraska losing some NFL caliber talent there. Marcus Washington does return for some experience, and they also get Billy Kemp for his 6th year. He's transferring in from Virginia. Guy can also return kicks. I think the guy to keep an eye on here is Malachi Coleman. He is a freshman. He is their highest recruit coming in. I think he has a chance to be something special. Malachi Coleman at wide receiver. Keep an eye on him. And then the tight end position is interesting. They got Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert, big man, 6'6", 260. Bounced around a little bit. Started out at LSU. And then went for 2 years to Georgia. Won 2 national championships. Really didn't, fill up the stat book over there. And so now he's coming to Nebraska for a chance to play. Now he's pretty deep on the depth chart right now, but keep an eye on him. See if as camp moves along, if he moves up, and if maybe by the time the year starts or sometime this season, he's the starting tight end for Nebraska. Eric Gilbert's got to keep an eye on there. Offensively, 5 of the last 7 games last year, Nebraska failed to rush for 100 yards. So let's take a look at that portion of the offense. Their offensive line tackle Turner Corcoran. He might move over from tackle to guard, and then they bring in a center. Ben Scott comes in from Arizona State. So I see what they're doing here. They're starting at the middle of the offensive line and working their way out. So again, I think they're going to move Corcoran over to guard and Scott plays center, and they're going to try and shore things up there and start the rebuild, if you will, from there. And then that should help the running backs, Anthony Graham and Gabe Ervin. Kind of a 1-2 punch. You got to have a 1-2 punch if you're coming in the Big Ten. Now, Grant led the team last year with 218 carries and 915 yards rushing plus 6 touchdowns. So that's a look at the offense. Let's take a look at the defense. I'm going to tell you right now, the defensive stat of the year, Northwestern got its only win of the year last year against Nebraska, and they did it by throwing up more than 500 yards of offense against this Nebraska defense. So let's start there when we look at things here. They're going to roll a 3-4 defense out this year, and up front, Nebraska did lose 2 pass rushers to the NFL. So I think a lot of true freshmen are going to get a chance to play up there, and that's tough. That's tough starting out that way, but they're going to get a shot. They got a couple of young guys they like, but they're going to be very raw. Ty Robinson returns. He'll be at nose tackle right in the middle, mountain of a man, 6'6", 310 pounds, so they're okay there. The linebacking core, Luke Reamer, 194 tackles, 11 pass breakups in the past 2 seasons. He comes back, but Ernest Hausman transferred to Michigan. They really wish they still had him. That would have been really helpful here. So he's going to Michigan. So they lose Hausman. So they're going to rebuild there. Georgia transfer, MJ Sherman, 6'3", 250 pounds, played 39 games in 3 years at Georgia. He's going to play on the defense. And Florida transfer, Chief Borders. Between Borders and Sherman, those two have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it. Well, secondary actually is a bright spot for Nebraska if you look at it. Quentin Newsome at the corner, pretty good. Honorable mention, All Big Ten. Also an academic All Big Ten guy in 2022. And he made 24 consecutive starts. In fact, that streak's still going. And he led the team with 10 pass breakups and also added a couple of sacks. So that is a really good player, Quentin Newsome on the corner. Pair him with some of these safeties. Safety combo, Miles Farmer, 73 tackles and an interception. Isaac Gifford, 2-time academic All Big Ten, primarily used in the nickel position, 70 tackles himself. So between Gifford and Farmer, you've got 2 of the top 3 tacklers coming back for this Nebraska defense. So that will be helpful. All right, now let's look at recruiting. Take a quick peek into the future now that we've kind of set the table for this upcoming season, because I think this is interesting. This is kind of fun, actually. Sources like 24/7 have them ranked in the top 20, maybe top 19. So good start recruiting. 23 hard commits already. Tight end Carter Nelson is probably the best one, 6'4", 205 from Ainsworth, Nebraska. He just committed on the 28th of June. Roger Grady, 6'1", 109-pound athlete. He comes from Garwood, Texas. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Quarterback Daniel Kalen, 6'2", 200-pound, out of Bellevue, Nebraska, at Bellevue West High School. He's going to come in as a quarterback. He committed back in May. Just in the past couple of weeks, though, Davon Hall, a 6'1" wide receiver, and Isaiah McMorris, a 6-foot wide receiver, both out of his high school at Bellevue West High School, have committed to the Cornhuskers. So I can guarantee you Kalen's been sitting here recruiting these guys. Hey, come on out with me. So he's a quarterback. He's got his 2 favorite receivers coming from high school. So look for that trio in the future as we move on. But those are some of the recruits coming into Nebraska for Matt Rhule's football team. So we've taken a look at the team as it stands today, quick peek of the future at how it will look coming in the near future. Now that we've done that, we're going to do what we always do here and take a look at the schedule with an honest game-by-game assessment of this guy. I'm going to tell you right now, Huskers fan, I don't necessarily like the way this schedule plays out for Nebraska, but we will take a look at it. That's what we do as we continue on Locked On Big Ten. We're brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That takes a lot of pressure off. If you want to do this, it's fun. It is fun. Just do it. Do it with all my friends. And we use bragging rights. The second half of the baseball season is now underway. Here's a hint. I think it's easier. Find a good pitching matchup that you like, and then take an over-under on the first inning or the first 5 innings. You can do that. And while the pitchers are still warming up and the hitters are still warming up, some low scores. That's a little tip I'll give you right there. So you bet just $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you could spend betting everything from money line or, like I said, these partial game prop bets as well. And it's all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, this is awesome. You get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Let's take a look at the Nebraska Cornhusker football schedule here. Now, what do we know about Nebraska? By the way, sold out every game at home at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln since 1962. That's awesome. You talk about a home field advantage. Last year, they lost 3 games by 3 points or less, lost 2 games by a touchdown or less. So a 4-8 season, if my math is any good, that could have been 9-3. Just like one play in 5 different games could have been 9-3. So was Scott Frost and his Cornhuskers that far off? Maybe not, but the change was made. And let's take a look at the schedule for this upcoming season. Now, I will tell you, I don't like this schedule very much. There's a couple of things that I think make it tough for Nebraska. So let's get into it. First of all, they open up on August 31st on the road. First 2 games on the road, by the way. That's the first thing I don't like. First one's at Minnesota. That's an 8 p.m. Thursday nighter on Fox National Television. So that's cool. Minnesota's a 7-point favorite in that game already. And I tend to like Minnesota with that. PJ Flex had his program up and running. Here we have Matt Rhule's first game starting over. That's going to be a tough game for Nebraska to win. By the way, feel free to agree with me or disagree with me. That's fine. No hard feelings. You can hit me on Twitter at TalkBig10, or I also answer the comments down below on YouTube if you want to hit me up on there. Second game is at Colorado on the 9th, and that's a noon game on Fox, another nationally televised game. Dion, Coach Prime versus Matt Rhule. That's the storyline there. Interesting quirk about Colorado's schedule. They open up on the road against TCU, the runners-up in the national championship game last year. Then this is their home opener with Coach Prime. It's going to be nuts out there at Colorado. This is a tough environment that Nebraska is going to be walking into at week 2. But maybe, you know who week 3 is for Colorado? Their arch rival, Colorado State. So I don't know if they're going to be looking ahead. I don't know if it's possible to look ahead when you've got your first home game with Coach Prime at Colorado. I don't know. Another brutally tough situation. But I think at the end of the day, Nebraska has way more talent than Colorado. They just stripped it down to the bones. Even if all these new players Dion's bringing in are good or better, who knows? To pull themselves together that quickly is a tall task. I think this is an opportunity for Nebraska to get a win here in their second game of the season. Follow that with a game against Northern Illinois, 7 p.m. on FS1, and then September 23rd against Louisiana Tech. So right there, first 4 weeks of the season, even though first 2 games are on the road, a couple of tough environments, a couple of toughest situations here, I think Nebraska could start out 3-1. I really do. So that's pretty good. And that's before going to take on Michigan. Now, Michigan comes to Nebraska. They come to Lincoln. Michigan 134-3. That's going to be a tough game. That's going to be a tough game. Michigan's going to be on a roll. I'm actually looking at that. That'll probably be a loss. Then the week after that, at Illinois, an 8 p.m. That's a Friday nighter on FS1. Lost to Illinois last year, 26-9. That's going to be another tough game. Maybe possibly a winnable game, but that's going to be a tough one. And then the bye. Nebraska gets to come out of the bye, and they get to take on Northwestern. So that's, I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's kind of like 2 byes because you get the bye week, and then you get a team that's going to be in shambles in Northwestern. So that's a game definitely that I think should be winnable against Northwestern. And then a couple of tough ones back-to-back. One at home against Purdue. And that was a game that they lost 31-28, close squeaker game. I think it'll be tough again this year. No, I mean 43-37. It was 43-37. Close game last year, kind of a shootout, if you will. And then Michigan State, at Michigan State, another close one. Those are 2 we're going to put an asterisk by and come back and visit, because then the following weeks in November, they take on Maryland at home. Nebraska goes on the road to take on Wisconsin. That's going to be super tough. And then the season finale, the Friday noon game on CBS, the Friday after Thanksgiving against Iowa, a game Nebraska did win last year, by the way, 24-17. This could go any number of ways. I think 6-6 is kind of the sweet spot, but I told you, I think Nebraska starts out 3-1. If you lose to Michigan, you lose to Illinois, you got the bye week. Northwestern winnable. Purdue could go either way. Michigan State could go either way. I think that Purdue, Michigan stretch, that 2-week stretch, end of October, early November, makes or breaks the whole entire season. And then followed by Wisconsin and closing it out with Iowa. That Maryland game sandwiched in between there as well. Pretty tough. I think anywhere between 7-5 and 5-7. Let's just call it 6-6 sweet spot. Now that gets Matt Rhule to a bowl game in his first year. That's pretty impressive, right? So that's how I see it. It could go any way. A lot of rebuilding still to do for Matt Rhule. So it's not going to be done overnight. There's no doubt about it. I do want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. Every day is our next show. We've got to take an early look at the Illinois football team. It's the last one. We've done everybody else in the Big Ten. I want you to subscribe on YouTube if you can, if you haven't already. Hey, by the way, if you've already subscribed down below, see that other share arrow? Think of a friend or a family member that you think would really particularly enjoy this Locked On Big Ten and share it with them and send it to them. Otherwise, if you all subscribe, that would be fantastic. Share, follow, like Locked On Big Ten. And coming up next, we have our weekly feature that we do. It's the Big Ten Network's the Big Ten's top 10 coming up next. I'm going to rank the running backs and the running games because some teams have multiple running backs. Some have one that's a superstar. We're going to break that down. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Big Ten. As we continue on Locked On Big Ten, thank you so much again for checking us out here today. All right, I want to look at the Big Ten's top 10 today. When the season starts, we're going to come out at the beginning of each week, and we're going to rank the teams after the games have been played and how I see them in the standings and whatnot. But since we don't have any games, getting a little creative here in the offseason, although fewer and fewer weeks left before we get into the games, we're going to look at running backs. And if you're in the Big Ten, you better be coming with some sort of dynamic duo, either due to attrition or just a 1-2 punch on offense. That's just the way it is in the Big Ten. And so I'm going to put this on the screen for those of you only listening on the audio podcast. We'll put it on the screen, but I will describe it in detail. And I think the number one running game in the Big Ten, hands down, slam dunk, is Michigan. Is absolutely Michigan with Blake Corum, 1,500 yards rushing and 18 touchdowns before his November injury against Illinois last year. And then he's decided to come back, and they still have Donovan Edwards, who also is capable of rushing 1,000 yards in his own right. Michigan may have two 1,000-yard rushers in that backfield if both guys stay healthy all season long. So I think by far they are the best running game in the entire Big Ten this year. Followed by Penn State. Nick Singleton set a Penn State freshman record with 12 touchdowns last year, and Katron Allen joins them. They are the first freshman teammates in Penn State history to both top 700 yards in a season. So they are a great duo. They're a year older, sophomores, bigger, stronger, and ready to go for a big season at Penn State. And number 3, and by the way, 2, 3, and 4 here, the margins are razor thin. We can move any one of these teams around. So don't be too offended if your team is a little lower than you think. But we're going to go with Wisconsin, number 3, with Braylon Allen. He was 4th in the Big Ten last year with 1,242 yards. What impressed me about him so much, he had 7 games where he rushed for over 100 yards in 2022. And Ches Malusi can come in, and he gave him 500 yards as well. So, again, that 1-2 punch. Ohio State, I'm putting at number 4, but Mayan Williams, he rushed for 824 yards last year and 14 touchdowns. But guess what? He did it while missing 5 games. If he plays the entire season, look out. I'm going to be moving this Ohio State up higher than 4. I'll tell you that right now. All right, some of the rest of the bunch. Maryland at number 5. Roman Hembley, he was 3rd in the country among freshmen in yards from scrimmage last year. Got a lot of attention. Iowa at 6 with Caleb Johnson, 779 yards as a true freshman. Got 200 yards against Purdue alone. Got a lot of attention, opened some eyes. Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator, now has Cade McNamara at quarterback, who hopefully will open things up for Iowa a little bit and open up the running game a little bit. At number 7, the Indiana Hoosiers. Here's their situation at running back. Christian Turner, big slasher from Michigan and Wake Forest. He's there now looking for a home. Josh Henderson comes back, another big back. But while they got those big, strong guys, Jalen Lucas, pretty impressive freshman last year, showed a lot of promise and some speed, comes back for his sophomore year, bigger, stronger, used to college football now. And I think he is really going to light it up for the Indiana Hoosiers. Their running game, by the way, was 13th in the league last year, so they definitely want to improve on that. At number 8, Purdue, Devin Maccabee, 7 starts, 968 yards last year. 4 games, he rushed for 100 yards, so that was impressive. And combined with Dylan Downing, the two of them combined for 1,300 yards rushing. So they have that 1-2 punch that I've been talking about in the Big Ten, and they have a new offensive coordinator and Graham Harrell, new head coach, obviously with Ryan Walters. Harrell kind of like to throw a little bit out of West Virginia, and that's the question. Purdue had some talent. I think they left some meat on the bone, if you will, in the running game last year. Didn't utilize it as well as they could have. I'm going to put Nebraska here at number 9 with Anthony Grant. 218 carries and 915 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to get another big load this year as a workhorse at running back. And at number 10, rounding it out, I'm going to put Illinois, the team that we'll feature in our next podcast. Chase Brown was a 5th rounder of the Bengals. He had over 1,600 yards last year. He's gone. Reggie Love comes back in. I think Reggie Love will kind of lead running back by committee for a while till he settles in. Any team that Brett Bielema is the coach of, you can go back to his days at Wisconsin, Arkansas, whatever. He likes to run the ball. So even if you look on paper at the beginning of the season, go, I don't know if they have any kind of rushing attack. They're going to run the football with Brett Bielema at Illinois this year. So that's how I look at it. Rounding out my top 10, our Big Ten top 10 for running backs and running games throughout the Big Ten this upcoming season. Again, feel free to disagree, yell, cheer, whatever you want to do. Hit me at Twitter at Talk Big Ten, or hit me with the comments on YouTube as well. I want to thank you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. Every day is our next show. We'll take an early look at Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini for Illinois. We're looking forward to all that, and that'll conclude everybody that we were going to do a preview on all 14 teams in the Big Ten. Again, interact with me on Twitter or on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And again, if you've already subscribed down below, click the little arrow share and share it with a friend. Somebody you've been thinking of while you watch this. You know, so-and-so would really like this podcast, Locked On Big Ten. I would love it if you'd be able to pass it along to them and spread the word a little bit. This thing's been growing leaps and bounds, and we've been really excited about it. So be sure to subscribe and follow. And you can check out next the Locked On Sports Today podcast for the latest on everything going on in sports. In the meantime, have a great day. Can't wait to talk to you again next time. I'm Craig Sheeman on Locked On Big Ten.